Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the From Busy to Rich podcast, where we help financial advisors grow their businesses beyond the products they sell and the assets they manage to increase profitability, reclaim their time by providing strategies and insights that will not only change your life, but practice. Wes, it's great to see you today, and I'm really excited to dive into today's topic and the stories that I know we have planned, because they're ones I feel like our listeners are going to recognize, at least from a high level. But it's interesting to see how these things evolved when you break it down to where they are today.
Yeah, I love this topic. If I had to call it something, think about this, Justin, is as we said in the last episodes, there are hundreds of planning strategies, hundreds of thousands of combinations of them. So you can't, even if they're relevant, you can't get to all these in one sitting. It's like going to a buffet. So you have to, as the advisor, once a client has engaged, they've gone through the location phase, which we've talked about. They've gone through the expectation phase where you're kind of high level, giving them an understanding of, hey, here's where you are. Here is the unlived life within you. And here's some areas of planning that are going to be super relevant to where you're trying to go. And then they hire you. And then you create this strategy summary that we talked about, and you create these areas that you're going to be moving through with the client. What's in progress? What's upcoming? What's on hold? That client's going to get that every month, every week, every other week initially, because that's typically our frequency of meeting. And you're just beginning to start picking paths. That's why we call this the direction phase. So last time we covered the kind of how do you use the family bank to complement everything else that's going on in your life, unleashing human potential, making sure that it's capable of paying you a passive income, whether you're trading time for money or not. And you've got a lot of things in motion now. You've probably are pulling over money. You've got them in underwriting for insurance as an asset class, not necessarily for death benefit purposes yet. And we've got, again, in Transform, we teach that in detail in a short format podcast. We only have a little bit of time with you. So you guys go check out WesYoungLive.com, and you can enroll in our most recent upcoming class. And we'd love to have you a part of that. But today, one of the things that's always on our list of things with people is to kind of deal with this area of what commonly might be known as what if scenarios. I like to refer to it as we want our clients to be able to leave not just an inheritance, but a heritage. So I want to give you a couple examples of the difference between the two and talk about the way this is commonly done, and then what we like to do when we're working with our clients on this. Because our ultimate objective is to help people that we're serving increase their profitability and quality of life. And the way we do this does it. And you can do it at a very basic level, and that's better than not doing it at all. But you can really turn this up, and people get real excited about it when you do. So a couple of families that are famous. Everybody's heard of the Vanderbilts. Everybody's heard of the Rockefellers. At their heydays, they were some of the richest people on the planet and of the known planet. Cornelius Vanderbilt left a fortune worth $100 million upon his death in 1877. And now today, you might be listening, and I think $100 million is still pretty good, but it was in 1877. So it's $2.4 billion worth of wealth today if he had died today. So that's the equivalent. And so it was he made him one of the richest people in America ever. And so here's what happened, though. He died, and because of an absence of leaving a heritage with his inheritance, and really doing even some kind of base level planning that we'll talk about today, the result was when 120 of his descendants gathered at Vanderbilt University in 1973 for the first family reunion, there was not one millionaire left in the bunch that showed up. And now some people in the Vanderbilt family have done really well, but it was not because of all the wealth they were left. Like Anderson Cooper is one, and he was actually left a massive fortune of $1.5 million. And that's not what made Anderson, right? That was like, oh, this is nice. Anderson's done fine without it. But it wasn't because of that specific wealth transition coming down the pike. You counter that with the Rockefeller family. So J.D. Rockefeller became the richest man in the world. The family fortune was valued at over $1.4 billion at the time of his death in 1937. And today, the wealth is estimated to be about $11 billion, stewarded still for the benefit of like 200 family members. And because of the way that it was left, because it was not only just an inheritance, but it was a heritage. And there's a big difference. And the people that I mean, they've gone on outside of that is stewarded in the family trust system, which we'll talk about. They've gone on to create extraordinary wealth outside of that because of the individuals they've become and how they were very intentional about leaving that heritage, not just the inheritance. So here's what I think, Jess. I think most of the time, traditional estate planning focuses on the what if scenario planning around things like what if your spouse, what if your business partner passes away? And it absolutely should do that. We should discuss what the situation would look like today if those things occurred, and what are some of the alternatives that may better align with you, what you really care about. Because as we say, meaningful financial planning is all about the alignment of the use of capital, time, talent, energy, attention, assets with what you really care about. Usually in this area, this involves what we call estate planning 101. And this is where good document structures like wills and trusts and buy-sell agreements get talked about and ultimately executed. And life insurance is these are all critical planning tools to tell a better story when any of those what if scenarios occur. So we're going to discuss examples of how we navigate these conversations. This is focused on leaving an inheritance, this first 101 section. But to take it up a notch, we also want to focus not stopping at leaving just an inheritance, but also leaving a heritage. And I want to talk about what the difference is, Justin. Is inheritance is the tangible assets and financial wealth that are legally transferred from one person to the next or one generation to the next upon death. And heritage is the broader legacy of values, traditions, knowledge, culture, and principles passed down through the generations from one person to the next or one generation to the next. And so we're going to go through, again, I'll remind you of what our meeting format looks like because they always look the same. And then we're going to get some very specific examples of kind of that base level 101, and then how you add on not just hey, here's a great way to pass the inheritance on in a meaningful way that'll make it last longer than if you do it without any thought or forethought. But then also, how do you leave that heritage, which really is what ultimately I would rather and have receive an heritage than inheritance. Because if you receive a heritage, even without an inheritance, you can create a large inheritance to leave to other people in your life later on. So before I move on to that and we start diving into the examples, what thoughts or feedback on any of that do you have, Justin?
I think it's critical to the conversation that good advisors should be having, and making sure that you're aware of how to approach this conversation in a way that's going to be exciting for the client is very relevant, because ultimately this entire process that we've been talking about the last few episodes is about having one that people are attracted to, that they want to be a part of, that gets them excited. Because I guarantee you, if you've been in this business for more than a day, talking about life insurance or estate planning typically is not something that people get excited about.
Yeah.
It's the conversation of the project that consistently has something else screaming louder at them for. And it's not the squeaky wheel that gets greased, it's the can that gets kicked down the road.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If you're listening and something sparks a question or you just want to explore these ideas further, visit us at wesyounglive.com or email us at info@wesyounglive.com. You'll find free resources, tools, and ways to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Everybody loves thinking about saving on taxes. They love thinking about growing their money so that work becomes optional because they have enough of an asset that's generating a passive income to pay them the income they want, whether they're working or not. But the least fun thing is to go, so let's talk about all the stuff if you die, or if your spouse dies, or if your business partner dies. Let's talk about that. But most people get it, right? And we can stand in the gap because when it happens, and I guarantee you this, Justin, it will happen, right? It's going to take place. So when that happens, we want to know what our plan is, but also not whether you just you pass away tomorrow. That's important. But if you live a long time, because honestly, the longer you live, the more you're going to leave, not just your inheritance, but the heritage, if you follow some of the things that we're going to talk about. So I think let's do this is I want to go through again, the format of our meetings. Because again, we're now in the direction phase. This client has, engaged us on an annual retainer. And so all of our meetings follow the same big parts. Okay. Prior to the meeting, you're going to have the meeting before you have the meeting. So that means you're going to have gone through, and your paraplanner, project manager is going to have, or you, if you don't have one, as I always say, you are one. They're going to have framed up in a Loom or some screen recording type of situation. Hey, here is what we're going to go over with this client. Here's all the stuff we're working on with them. Here's where their stuff is in process. Here's their strategy summary and who's taken what steps. And then today, really the focus is going to be, in this case, on heritage and inheritance. Heritage and inheritance. And it's going to involve these specific areas. And here's kind of their story, their situation. If they have existing documents, here's what they say. And here's what the situation looks like right now. If they were to die, their spouse was to die, both were to die, or the business partner, if they die or the business partner dies, how does that impact the assets that they've been jointly working on together? And then you're going to kind of roll through the way you see this conversation going. Then you're going to have the same big parts of the actual meeting. You're going to have the welcome, the common ground, healthy tension, and next steps. And so the way this looks, again, I'll just go through it briefly. The welcome, hey, Justin, thank you. And beautiful Bill, our audio engineer behind the scenes, thank you for joining me today. We've scheduled about an hour for today's conversation. Are you still good on time? Absolutely. Great. Well, so our thoughts for today's meeting to continue on in your planning here is we were going to first just renew your mind very quickly to the balance sheet and then more move over into the scenarios that revolve around this idea of leaving not just an inheritance, but a heritage. And so if something happens, what if scenarios? What if you live a long time or you pass away tomorrow, how are you doing in those two areas? What does it look like today? What gaps do we identify that you'd like to see things different? And we're going to give you some examples of things that people in your similar situations do to make things better, both during life and then at their eventual death. And then we'll figure out any action items that come out of that and how we'd like to move in this area moving forward in the future. Anything else you want to get talked about today before we get started? And then they're going to be like, no, that sounds great. So then you're going to go through the balance sheet. That's kind of where you're getting them on common ground, reminding them of what they have. And then you're going to move into the place of healthy tension, which is where you begin these conversations. And a reminder of what healthy tension is. This is where you want to help them understand, hey, do I have gaps between where I am and between where I'd like to be? To the life I'm living and the unlived life within me? And if I do, what are some of the solutions to helping me close those gaps? And hopefully we can pick a path to say, this is the road to getting this closer to where you want it to be. And then at the end, you're going to have next steps, which is the path that you're going to pursue. What are we doing about it? What do you need to do? And what is the timing and process of that? So with that, here's what I want to go immediately into. I want to tell you about the estate planning, kind of estate planning, the inheritance and heritage examples, the conversation that we have there. So one is just going to be, hey, if something happens to you right now, like today, let's see what that looks like. And the first place I like to start with this is like a flow of their estate in the event that let's say we do it in both orders, but if you pass away first, then we'll look at if your wife passes away first, then we'll look at in either of the second deaths, what does it look like? What money, what assets are flowing to that person or to those people? How are they going? And so here's a basic way I describe it. I say, so I'm going to use example of, and for this audio, I'll use examples. Let's say it's me and Jamie. I'll say, so what the way we would like it to look, most people, is like at my death, I want Jamie to have use and control of everything. And then at her death, we would like our kids to have the benefit of the inheritance that we've created. And now in our case, there may be some, depending on the complexity of the situation, maybe there's charities in addition to that. If you're a second marriage and you've got kids of the marriages, maybe there's other things. But whatever it is, one quick thing, and Justin and I, we had a great meeting a couple of weeks ago with a client, and they were like, oh yeah, we spent a lot of time on our will and trust. And we said, great, let us see them. And then we flowed out their estate as if it was going to occur exactly like their documents said and how all their assets were titled. And so when we floated out, they were like, we don't want that, you know? And so Mike Piotrowicz, one of my teachers way back in the day, he used to say, hey, if you don't flow it, you don't know it. Because you might think in your head it's one way, but in the estate planning world, here's the thing. Assets pass one of three ways. They pass by, first and foremost, beneficiary. I don't care what your documents say. If the beneficiary says a person and that person's alive, regardless of what you've wrote about in your will and trust documents, it's going to go to that person. Next, by title. So again, regardless of what your documents say, if you own something joint with right of survivorship with somebody, even if your documents say something to the contrary, title wins every time. And then finally, either documentation or the state's intestacy laws. If you don't have a will, the state has appointed one for you. And it might not be the will that you would actually like. So with all that, we make sure that we flow what they have currently so they can kind of see what it does. Now, there's two parts to this. First, I'm just going to go, hey, let's just say, how would life be for your spouse if you're no longer around? And so we have a very simple output on Planning Shepherd because we want to not just show, hey, here's all the stuff that goes, but we want to show right now, here we show an income section that we say, right now you're working, your human capital is extraordinarily valuable. You're making $500,000 a year. And then you've got maybe some real estate income, maybe some income that will continue on that's not connected to your human capital. So you've got the one scenario. Then we show the same scenario next to it at death. And so the only thing that typically changes here is one, if I'm generating income for being actively engaged in my business, that income goes away. Now, maybe you own a business and incomes would continue because of how you've built the business, but you got to know that, would it? And if so, how much? And so, or if you have somebody that's not a business owner, that's just a high income earner, either way, how's it changed? And so many times that income they're producing goes to zero from their human capital. And then they're going to have maybe some real estate income, maybe not, maybe some other business income, maybe not. And then you've got liquidity. And you're going to, okay, and maybe they had some life insurance. Most clients have a little bit, right? And then we'll put that in the mix to say, hey, look, so your income drops from $750,000 a year down to $250,000 a year. And you told me that you and your spouse, the way you guys like to live, to keep at your current standard of living, you need about $600,000 a year. And so now with your liquidity that you have, so we always, part of the number is, if let's say their liquidity is $1 million at death or $2 million at death, we'll use that. We say, what income would that produce for the survivor of the two of you at a conservative 5% interest rate? So $2 million, because it sounds like a lot, right? It would produce at 5% $100,000 a year. So if I'm making $500 a year, and let's say I've got nothing else, by just easy example, and I die, then that 500's gone, but I have a liquidity, and it sounded great because I had $2 million, and I'm only making $500 a year. Well, that'll last you 4 years, right? If I want $500,000 of income, or if I want it to last forever, it's going to pay me $200,000 a year at least. And so we show this. It's got a great easy output in Planning Shepherd that shows it right next to each other. And I can't tell you how many times we've had this conversation with clients and they say, wow, that's a problem. We need some more insurance. And I'm like, well, that's an easy solve, easy solution. Because that's one of the benefits of insurance. It's an easy tool to be able to replace the human capital of someone who's providing a lot of income to their family if they want to keep their family in the same standard of living over time. And so oftentimes that's one component. And we'll do it vice versa. If the spouse dies first, how does that impact you? Now that you don't have whatever it is, even if you have, like in my situation, my wife, she does all the bookkeeping and HR for our organization. But if she's gone, I mean, one, I would have to go hire someone to do that. I would also have to hire somebody to manage all of my life because I would not be great without her helping me out with those things. So again, sometimes they'll say, well, my wife doesn't work outside the home, but how would that disrupt things? One is you've lost your spouse. I don't know what that does to your income producing ability for a while. But two, I mean, how's it going to disrupt your life? And so we just get them to think about and try this on, because sometimes people have inherited a soundbite or My favorite's like, well, she's pretty, she'll remarry. That which I'm like, yeah. Does she know that? Has she? Maybe she start looking now because it seems like you don't care. And then for the kids, they're going to go through college. They're going to go through all those things. So walking them through that exercise extraordinarily important. But then we do this. Then we say, now let's talk about how we leave it. So let's say, again, we fix the income number by putting insurance in place, whatever we need. And then at the first death, so at my death, everything goes into trust for the benefit of Jamie. And she's the trustee. She's the beneficiary of it. So she has all the control, but none of the downside of ownership. And what is the downside? Well, if she gets hit by a litigation attorney's client and they sue and get a judgment, by state statute, they can't touch the stuff that's protected in that trust. If she gets married and she gets divorced, they can't take half the money that I meant for my family to have. Vice versa for me. It works the other way. Then you take it down to the next generation. So depending on the age of the kids and things like that, we want this money to go for the benefit of Gage and Abby's human development. Now, with that, they're 21 and 19. And Justin, I don't know what you were like at 21 and 19. My kids are great kids, but even if they're great kids, they don't know what to do with millions of dollars, that are going to be there for them. So what we have is a trust structure. And so money goes in trust for the benefit of Gage and Abby. And we have a competent trustee that's a part of that trust that's responsible for helping like push the benefit out of that trust to take care of college, as an example right now, to help them, give them a leg up by maybe helping them with a down payment on a house at some point. Things I would do if I was there alive, right? That's really what we're there for. And depending on what they want to do, I want them to unleash their human potential. And so what do we want in there to help them along the way throughout their life to really do that? Well, this trustee is a big part of that. Then at certain ages, in our case, age 25, they can become co-trustee, which doesn't give them power. It just begins to give them experience. What goes on in a trust? What decisions have to be made? Taxes that have to be filed, investment decisions. And then at age 35, if the trustee says green light, they can become their own trustee. But what it does is protects them, first from just their youth and inexperience. Two, it protects them from predators, people that have those great ideas. Justin, you always refer to it as the great idea fairy. When all of a sudden people know you have money, they are like, hey, I want to open a Korean barbecue restaurant. I want to open up have you ever done that? No, but I love eating at them. It's great. Or a bar, everybody wants to own a bar because I like drinking beer. So that sounds great. And it's not that they're ill intentions. It's just they're like, hey, you got money and you feel good. So it prevents them from making decisions that would negatively alter their future. That just comes with time and evaluating opportunities, reps with that evaluation. So then you have the time and place where like maybe they've developed themselves and they want to take a loan from the family bank that is there to go start a business. And if the trustee's there though to help guide them along that way. So what you're doing at a very minimum is preventing them when they're young from hey, just predators or just goofy ideas that we've all done. I paid a lot of tuition in ideas that I thought were great ideas and weren't. But then also if they get married and divorced, that wealth isn't depleted. If they get sued and they get a judgment against them, that wealth's protected in trust. So basic trust structure is going to go something along the lines of that. We have an estate planning questionnaire that simply outlines each role in an estate plan: executor, trustees, powers of attorney, those kind of things. And then they just put on there who they want. And then we're going to take that, kind of have the structure, go take that to attorneys that are going to be able to do a good job drafting that for them. We get it back. We summarize it. We use our attorneys to summarize it as well, change anything that needs to be changed, and then we're done. So that's step one. All right, now step two, and this is where we'll land the plane on this today, is so those are documents and that's insurance. But now we want to get into the real heritage side of things. So I love this idea of having a family constitution. And a family constitution is one where you basically sift out, hey, if you were going to write one last letter to your family to say, or even to a younger version of yourself, you were going to write a letter to them and say, hey, after living this life, let me tell you about the things about wealth and about the kind of person you want to become to be able to good steward of these things. Let me tell you about the things that I get super excited about, that if I could go back in time and tell myself this, it would have put me so much further down the road, so much faster. And you're going to kind of write this out, and we help our clients with it. We kind of give them a draft that's written out and say, you guys massage this. But a lot of things are kind of key critical points. And then what you're going to do, this even takes it a step further, is you're going to record yourself on a Loom video talking. First, you could read it. You could just speak to it. You can pontificate off of it and give them stories, legacy stories of, let me tell you about when your mom and I first started this business. And let me tell you about the risk we took, but we felt like God was telling us to do it. And it was really hard, but here are the things that I worried about and I wouldn't worry about today. Here are the things we overcame. One of the ways my friend Garrett Gunderson talks about this, you want to kill a family, kill the lead storyteller, because there's so much wisdom. I mean, I can remember sitting with grandparents and uncles and my dad and hearing their stories of overcoming adversity, hearing the things that they look back on as, man, this was a meaningful mindset that I had. And this is something that I believe that just wasn't true, that you can accelerate the learning around the way the family, and by the way, your trustee is going to love this too, because they're going to be able to see, oh, this is what this family's about. And you just do this recording. And then the best part about this is every year, you're going to update that recording, and you're going to update your family constitution. And every year you're going to have this, like 10 years from now, you'll have one that's 10 years old, you telling you, here's what I think is important. And then that 10-year-old version can go, yeah, that one had it a little wrong. So what it was, that part was true, but this part wasn't. And because this oftentimes doesn't come with it. And then making sure that everybody understands, here's the way that we want this trust to help you. We want it to help you become the person you're capable of becoming. Here are the opportunities you have with it. If you reach certain levels, your ability to steward more wealth because you become a more faithful steward. You know, when you're faithful over little, you can become a ruler over more. And how all this works and what our design and intent was. So we got a process we take them through. For some clients, we encourage it. Some are better at others than doing this, but we encourage, do a family retreat once a year at least. And you can make it fun. It's all like, depending on the age of your kids, you know, yours would look a little different than mine, Justin, for your younger kids. But talk about, like, have them watch that and say, hey, what'd you think about that? What are your thoughts around that? What meaningful things would you say that if you could go back and tell the 10-year younger version of yourself? It doesn't have to be weird. You can have a lot of fun, go fishing, do a bunch of cool stuff. Have them put together remember when moments. Hey, just one thing. We're going to pay for the house. We're going to get everybody there. The only thing we ask you to bring is a short I remember when story that involves the family. And you know what? You'll have so much fun sitting around, you know, eating and having a glass of wine or whatever you want to do and telling those I remember when stories. You'll cry sometimes, you'll laugh, you know. So it's a great way to be intentional about leaving a heritage, not just an inheritance. And so that's kind of the meat of it. Justin, I'll let you kind of summarize and put us land the plane here.
Yeah, and I know it was a bit of a rhetorical question, but I do want to add some clarity around, if I received a bunch of money at age 19, I'm pretty sure my 19-year-old self would have known exactly what to do with it. The difference is I don't think I would have been alive at 40. So not necessarily as good, but I think, again, the point of it is you're driving a transformational planning process versus a transactional one. Transactions happen as part of it.
Absolutely.
But you're creating something, and that's what we hope that you enjoyed today's episode and get from it is helping to create something that creates impact across multiple generations through that. So again, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.